As most of you know, we just wrapped up our 13th annual Plantstock celebration weekend event, and I want to sincerely thank everyone who either came in person and joined us on the mountain and those who tuned in from home. If you'd like to take advantage of our next in-person experience, come join me and the Plantstrong team in beautiful Sedona, Arizona this October from the 8th to the 13th. We've got 12 spots available, and enjoy an immersive and an interactive retreat amongst the red rocks of Arizona. We'll do all the cooking. You get to come relax, meet new friends, get answers to all your burning questions, enjoy some yoga, take daily hikes, enjoy endless buffets of Plantstrong meals, be entertained and educated with our world-class presentations, or challenge me at pickleball. And all the while, you'll be fully supported by our incredible Plantstrong team. Register at liveplantstrong.com or send us an email with all your questions at hello@plantstrong.com. I'm Rip Esselstyn, and you're listening to the Plantstrong podcast. All right, Plantstrong people, I am going to dive right into today's episode because today's guest, the incomparable Chef Abby J, better known as AJ, really needs no introduction. She is such a light in the plant-based community. She is so generous with her time and her talents. Her new book, called Sweet Indulgence, comes out on August 27th, and today we are going to roll around and get caught up on her life, discuss the new book, and she is going to give us an extra special treat. Drum roll, a live demonstration of one of the recipes in her book, the frozen peanut butter chocolate cheesecake, and she clearly knows the way right to my heart. This interview was recorded as part of our recent 13th annual Plantstock weekend celebration, where we had over 10 different Plantstrong chefs that tore it up. Now, I would strongly encourage you to consider pre-ordering Chef AJ's new book, because when you do, you'll receive a lot of bonuses, including videos of AJ making every dessert in the book. That's over 150 videos. Just go to chefaj.com to make sure you don't miss out. Okay, here to grace us for the second time on the Plantstrong podcast, Chef AJ. Hey, everybody. AJ, it is so fantastic to see you. Welcome to Plantstock 2024. This is also going to be one of the Plantstrong podcasts. And what are you doing in your kitchen holding up it looks like a copy of a weird kind of wonderful book. Is this the same one I'm holding up?
It's not weird at all. This is my brand new cookbook that comes out on Tuesday, August 27th. It's called Sweet Indulgence, with many, over 150 guilt-free recipes sweetened naturally with fruit. But because it's you, Rip, I am going to make the recipe that you ate at my house. I've never given this out before, the frozen peanut butter chocolate cheesecake. It's so famous that it actually made the back cover. In addition to having superstars like you enjoy it, I used to make this for an actress when I lived in LA named Heather Graham that you might remember from the Austin Power movies, and she loved it, and it's absolutely delicious. All the recipes are vegan, of course, whole food, plant-based, without sugar, oil, well, actually refined sugar. We do use the fruit, the whole fruit, nothing but the fruit, or salt, and they are delicious.
So, AJ, can you put the book down for a second? Because I want to see your outfit. So
I got this just for you, Rip. I had a custom-made tie-dyed chef coat with the glitzy little Chef AJ here.
Is that in honor of Plantstock 2024?
Absolutely. Plantstock, Woodstock, tie-dye. I figured would go well.
So AJ, you're like, it's funny because I wanted to see how many times I've had you to be part of either the podcast or Plantstock. And so I kind of, in the search engine on my podcast, I put Chef AJ, and literally I realized you came on episode 143 for everybody that's listening. And we were talked about the secrets of ultimate weight loss, one of your most successful books. And I want to talk about how you have lost 60, 70 pounds and kept it off for 10 plus years. Incredible.
Thank you.
But then what I realized is I kept going down, and I kid you not, there must have been 50 different episodes of the Plantstock podcast where different people mentioned Chef AJ. So
Wow.
your name is ubiquitous in the whole food plant-based movement in the arena. And I think you're aware of it, but it's just when I think back to when I first met you at one of Jeff Nelson's Veg Source, events, and you quickly became one of my, biggest cheerleaders. And this is before I'd written The Engine to Diet or anything like that. Right. And how you were like just waiting to break in and, get in there. And you were so persistent. You just never gave up. And now I look at what you've done with all your books, your Live with AJ show, the fact that I pull you up on my podcast and everybody mentions you. It's really phenomenal. I mean, way to be, girl.
Thank you. That's really lovely. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into this wonderful recipe that you're going to create for us and anything else, I do want to talk for a sec about somebody that you and I had a great affinity for, who recently passed away, and that's Dr. John McDougall, who we both just, we're doing our best to carry his torch. But didn't you have him on your show like every other week or something like that?
The first Monday of every month for over 4 years was Monday with the McDougalls. So gosh, that would be over 50 episodes of Dr. John McDougall's brilliance.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I just can't believe that he's gone. It's so hard to believe.
No one can. What a shock.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a lesson to be learned in this? I guess it's just that life is fragile and, just do the best you can. He literally was the giant that we were, standing on his shoulders, all of us.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things people don't understand is the plant-based diet does make you bulletproof against certain diseases, but it doesn't make you bulletproof against death, because even vegans die, and even healthy vegans die. And I think people don't realize that how long we live is largely determined by our genetics, but how well we live is often determined by our diet and lifestyle. And that's why it's so important to eat this way and to live this way. And I'm happy that if he had to die, he died the way he did, without a long lingering disease. And he went to sleep one night and didn't wake up, which is what I wish for everyone, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dive into this new exciting book that has captured every one of my 32 sweet tooths. So why this book and why now?
Well, why? That's a great question, because really the book was scheduled if the book had come out when it was originally thought of, and it had a different name, A Date with Dessert, which would have been right after Unprocessed, so it would have been 2012, it would have been a completely different book, because at the time, like you say, I weighed 60 pounds more than I weigh now. What was happening is, as I was starting to lose weight, I realized I couldn't include some of these desserts or as many desserts if I wanted to stay slender. So I kind of put desserts aside, even though that is my true passion. I was an executive vegan pastry chef at a Los Angeles restaurant for years. And so I kind of forgot about it. Most of the recipes were written, by the way. And then people just kept pestering me for this book. And I realized that most people, Rip, aren't going to completely desert. And even people that follow very strict diets occasionally maybe either go off plan intentionally or unintentionally. And I wanted to have the healthiest desserts that I could give people. And what I love about this book is, and I'm hoping it's a crossover book, and it is for vegans, but I'm hoping that because it'll be in bookstores, people will see that you don't have to be vegan to enjoy vegan desserts. And not everybody's going to be vegan, and you might not be able to give, a veggie burger to a hardcore carnivore. But if you give them this cheesecake, they're not going to eat it and say, this is good, but, where's the dairy? Where's the egg? Where's the milk? They're not going to know. And I remember a long time ago, I was on a television show called Cupcake Wars. And I didn't want to do it because I had to use some ingredients in some of the recipes I wasn't comfortable with, like a little bit of oil and a little bit of maple syrup. And I remember consulting with Dr. Barnard, and he said, look, desserts are a great way to draw people in. He actually wrote the foreword to my book. He said, draw them in with dessert and then hit them over the head with the kale. So in the book, for people that are kosher, they can use these recipes, people that are gluten-free, whether they're vegan or not. And what is really neat about this book, and if I had written it, 12 years ago, it would have just been all the high-fat, high-calorie density desserts, even though they didn't have refined sugar, oil, and salt. But because my palate adjusted and my weight became less, I was able to create even more desserts that are very low calorie density that would be suitable for people on different programs. And what I think is brilliant about this book that my designer, Janine Elder of Potato Wisdom, did is every single recipe is rated on sweetness and fat content. So there's this amazing grid that will tell you if the recipe is subtly sweet, like I think it's slightly sweet, subtly sweet, or superbly sweet, low fat, high fat, or medium fat. So people can pick and choose based on their individual preferences. Exactly. And she has like a little strawberry. I thought that was just really cool. So people will know, what they're getting into. But even so, a lot of people want to have the ability to make special occasion desserts for holidays, for birthdays, or, not everybody has a weight problem too. So there's going to be something for everybody in this book. There's even raw dessert recipes. There's recipes with chocolate, without chocolate. So I'm very proud of this book and the team that helped me create it.
Oh, you should be. I mean, it's absolutely, it's so, not only is it beautiful, but it's so well thought out, laid out. And I can't believe like 150 different recipes. And I'm like, there's no way. And then I looked at the table of contents and then I realized, I mean, this is so brilliant. And you've laid it out alphabetically as far as the, bake, chill, crunch, dip, freeze, fry, iron, lick, nuke, pop, sip, spoon, speed, sprinkle, squeeze. I mean, can you say all those right together?
Absolutely.
Have you memorized?
And that was the designer's idea. And I love it too. There's dehydrated recipes. And like you said, there's 156. And so, I mean, I think it'd be worth it just to get the cupcake recipe on the cover, if you ask me.
Well, and speaking of, and you mentioned how Dr. Neil Barnard wrote the foreword. And the story that he writes about is how, he was in a hurry. He had to go somewhere. So you made him this special cupcake and he took it on his limousine ride to the airport or whatever it was. And it was this cupcake that's on the cover of the book, right?
Absolutely. It's just coincidental, but I'm so happy. And that's the cupcake I made on Cupcake Wars too. Yeah. Yeah. And did you say that the woman who came up with the idea to do these, the different charting, I guess for, indulgence. The scale. Thank you. The scales. Did you say that her company is called Potato Wisdom? Potato Wisdom. Yes, she wrote a wonderful book and her name is Janine Elder. Big fan of Dr. McDougall's and eating starch and eating potatoes. She's a wonderful graphic designer. Oh my gosh. Wow. I love the name of her company. That's wonderful. Yeah. And I noticed too that your dedication to this book is in memory of Hans Diehl, another great, plant-based force that we lost, over a year ago, I think it was. Yeah. And that's why it was a double whammy, first Dr. Diehl and then Dr. McDougall. Yeah. Very, 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 very brutal. The introduction, after the foreword by Neil Barnard, you have this great introduction by Michael Gorin, this PhD that's the author of Sugar Proof. But I mean, how did you find this guy? Was he a regular on Live with AJ or something? So, I for many years I hosted the Real Truth About Weight Loss Summit. You were a speaker one of the years, and he was recommended by somebody. He's a lovely man, and he's actually considered a childhood pediatric obesity specialist. And so, we became friendly, and I asked him if he would write something about it because in his book, he uses things like bananas, like dates, and I think people need to realize that sugar, whether you're vegan or not, is pretty deleterious to your health. It's not a health food. It's a hurt food, and that people need to not be afraid of fruit. So I thought he did a great job writing the introduction.
Well, he did. And then the fact, like how he talked about how these children, all their organs are still developing, you know, our brains, our microbiome, obviously, you know, we got our teeth, the liver, all these things. And so much of what we're feeding these children as all these organs are being developed is so highly processed with all these sugars that can have like lasting effects that go all the way into their adulthood. So, if you get the book, read the intro by Michael Gorin. It's really wonderful.
And you know, the thing is when children eat so much sugar from a young age, or even if the mother was having a lot of sugar when the child was in utero, it just sets them up to have an extraordinarily high desire and expectation for sweet. And that's why they're not going to eat kale, you know?
No. And you don't have any stevia or monk fruit either in this book, do you?
No, or lohan or coconut sugar or coconut sap or barley malt or molasses or honey, which isn't even vegan, or maple syrup or agave. I try to use all whole fruits when possible, like dates or bananas, but it's very easy to make dates into a paste simply by blending dates with a liquid in a food processor. I am comfortable using date syrup, and the reason is it's not in every recipe, even though it's a concentrated sweetener and has calories, I can make date syrup in my kitchen. And in my first edition of my book on processed, there was a recipe. The thing is it takes a while because you have to boil and reduce. It takes like 45 minutes. It takes less time to go to Walmart and buy organic date syrup, which is available now. So that is why I'm comfortable using it, because it still is a whole food. Nothing has been taken out. You know, who can make maple syrup in their own kitchen, or agave or honey or any of that? So I am comfortable using date syrup, and I try not to use it in large amounts in most recipes. This is an extremely rich recipe that we're making today, so that it will have a lot of date syrup. A lot of the recipes, some of them don't even have dates.
Yeah. I think one of the things that, and I'm going back to Michael Gorin, and where he talked about how like stevia and monk fruit, which, you know, I know are very popular, how they're naturally occurring, but they have more than 100 times the sweetness of ordinary like table sugar, and how they're not inert inside our bodies. And so it's just, you know, I love your whole philosophy, AJ. You just use the whole fruit. Wait, the whole fruit, nothing but the fruit, right?
Right. And I want to just say about stevia, it's one thing if you have a stevia plant growing and take that green leaf, but the people that are using stevia are using the highly processed powders or liquid, which, I know you're friends with Dr. Will B. All the gastroenterologists I've ever talked to said stevia is terrible for our gut microbiome. And the thing is it perpetuates the desire for more sweet, because like you said, stevia is thousands of times sweeter than any kind of sugar.
Yeah. So I want to, before we dive into your book and some recipes, and I keep forgetting that you're supposed to make something for us as well.
Yeah. Whenever you're ready.
But I loved reading about your childhood and your fascination with being, you know, a chef and desserts. Can you tell us what was the first recipe that you ever made, as far as like a dessert recipe? Do you know what it is?
I know the answer. I know the answer.
I know it too. So I hope
you could be going one of two ways, because if you're talking about with the easy bake oven, that would have been that, where you just mix the water and bake it. But the first recipe, I know what you're going for. My oldest brother, this was his favorite recipe. It was from the Betty Crocker Girls and Boys Cookbook, which is like a relic now. And it was called Tinglings. And these are so delicious. You basically have two ingredients. You have semi-sweet chocolate chips and you have Wheaties. And I did this, my first demonstration in school. We used to have to do these things for Mr. Smith's class, Mr. Ivan Smith. They were called How to Do It presentations. You literally just melt your chocolate chips, you pour in the Wheaties, mix it up, and you make these clusters and you chill them on wax paper. They are so delicious. And you could probably find healthy Wheaties today and healthy chocolate chips and still make them. Oh gosh,
well, I'm so glad you mentioned Mr. Smith's class and the How to Do It project, because I laughed my ass off when I read that in your book. And you're like, everybody else was like, how to build a rocket, and how to, how does the government work, and you're like, how to make fudge.
Yeah, exactly. I just loved, desserts bring people together. Desserts make people happy. And it's just,
Yeah.
we need more sweet in the world.
We do. And well, what I love too is that you're just so authentically AJ, right? Going back to when you were basically like in the womb. I mean, you even say like, you had a sweet tooth before you even had a tooth.
Exactly. I mean, and I think it's because my mom made like so much chocolate when she was pregnant with me. M&Ms with peanuts were like her favorite food. So, I kind of coming out the gate, I was sort of already a little sugar addict, if you will.
Oh yeah. And then I want to keep going down this path for a little bit longer, because it shows how true to this path you've been. Like you, and I don't know what age, but you like devoured 27 volumes of Time Life's anthology of cookbooks. Like, what is up with that?
I lived with an aunt who was Swiss, and her mother, they were from Geneva, had a 5-star cordon bleu restaurant in Switzerland. And they had all these books. And just like other people would read novels or comics, I always loved to read cookbooks. And I remember my very first formal dinner party at the age of 11, I even sent out real handwritten invitations. Was using these Time Life cookbooks. I wasn't vegan then, so I there was meat there, but I remember there was something with leeks or braised leeks, and I made a souffle au grand marnier and something with an apple. I don't know. It was pretty elaborate for an 11-year-old, let me tell you.
Yeah. Now, if you were to go back to your stomping ground, and if you were to go to Stan's Donuts, what donut would you buy?
That is so funny that you would say this today, because I literally just got back from Las Vegas and I had my picture taken with the statue of Elvis, and it would be the Elvis.
I saw the post. Yeah.
So they had Stan's Donuts. They had a donut there that was inside was peanut butter and banana. And then, obviously it was deep fried, and then had this coating of like chocolate fudge on it with chocolate chips. It would definitely be the Elvis.
I think my favorite thing in the whole wide world is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with bananas on it. That's just still my favorite thing. It really is. Although this dessert that you're going to making is right up there. Yeah. You like to say, AJ, that life is uncertain. Eat dessert first.
I said that for a long time, but now I would say, because life is uncertain, eat vegetables first.
That's adorable. Let me ask you this. What is it about real whole food desserts that, and I think it's one of the reasons why you've written this book, that allow you, for the most part, to moderate your consumption?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think the reason is because a lot of people say, well, I can't lose these desserts and lose weight. And that's true. If you eat peanut butter chocolate cheesecake all day, every day, you're not probably going to lose weight. But people have to understand, and not everybody understands food addiction or sugar addiction. If you were having the diet that I had up until July 6, 2003, when I gave up sugar for the final time, I was having Coke Slurpees for breakfast at the age of 43, 27-ounce Coke Slurpees with 8 pumps of vanilla syrup, 48-ounce Big Gulp Dr. Peppers, regular from 7-Eleven for lunch, and all kinds of candies, cakes, cookies, pies, and ice cream that were vegan but full of sugar. I did not go from that diet to eating vegetables for breakfast. I had a transition period. And to me, dates are the transition. They're like methadone. And yes, they still have calories. They're about 1,300 calories per pound. Sugar is still more calorically dense at 1,800 calories per pound. Yeah. But what dates have is they are a whole food, which means, unlike sugar, dates have fiber, water, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, micronutrients. There's none of that in processed sugar. And so because they have fiber and water, you get some satiety, you get fullness for it. Just the same thing with nuts. nuts are 3,200 calories per pound, as opposed to oil, which is 4,000 calories per pound. But again, they're a whole food, so they have fiber. So while if I was eating, I used to love white cupcakes with white frosting and sprinkles from Ralph's, I could eat the entire 6-pack. But when I would make date nut desserts, I could maybe eat a normal serving, like 1 or 2 or maybe 3 truffles, because they were actual food. And
Right.
so for me, this was a way to get off sugar. And eventually I didn't require as much sweetness. And, now, my favorite dessert happens to be the one that I made last year on Plantstock, was with a simple strawberry pie, which is basically fruit and oats, which you could eat for breakfast.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, AJ has become a regular at Plantstock. This is your 3rd year in a row. I think you're
Yay.
next to Ann and Jane. There's nobody else that's been invited back this much.
Well, thank you. I'd love to come in person sometime. I'm traveling again.
We'll make that happen. Let's make that happen. Hey,
I would love to.
Before you dive in, and I've got so many questions for you on this book, but I look at the book and I look through the photos. And let me show everybody this. Can you see that?
Those are hockey pucks. That's in honor of your dad.
Well, I know you said they were going to be called Essies, and then you changed it at the last second. I can't remember why.
And Wheat said that wasn't a good name.
And Wheat. But my question to you is this: I don't know if I've ever seen photography as stellar as this. I mean, where did you find Hannah Kaminsky?
Hannah Kaminsky, I think like at the age of 18 or 19, had her first book. I think it was called My Sweet Vegan. She is the most extraordinary photographer. She's an ethical vegan. She's an amazing food stylist. And I can't say enough about her, because any comments I get about this book, it goes to Hannah, because without her beautiful photos, it just wouldn't be that book. She is extraordinary. Yeah.
Well, and I can't believe the number of these photos.
One photo with every recipe, because, that's what people said in my previous books. It's expensive to have color photos for every recipe. So some of my books had no photos. Some had like 10 or 12 photos. And that's why it's taken a while to get this book done, so that we could serve the reader with what they asked for, a photo with every single recipe.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
can I say something? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Well, if people, not only is there a photo with every recipe, but if people buy the book, the week it comes out or before, because as you know, as a New York Times bestseller yourself, it's really important to have pre-sales or those first 5 days, because after 5 days, the sales count, but not towards New York Times bestseller. Yeah. Anyone who buys that book, if they save their receipt, we'll have a dedicated email. We will send them a video of every single recipe so they can actually see how it's made.
What? That's incredible that you went to those lengths. I can't.
That's worth over $1,000. Every recipe is filmed.
Did you make? I mean, okay, obviously, Hannah photographed every one of these. Did you make these? You had a sous chef as well, right? That was super helpful.
So she actually, because she's a vegan and a vegan chef and a food stylist, she actually made all the recipes.
What? She made these?
Yeah.
That took a lot of work off your plate.
But it took her a long time. It took all of us a long time. It took 6 months to film 156 recipes.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Wow. But that's only for pre-sales. If once the book is out, you're never going to get that bonus again.
Wow. Okay. So I've got a bunch of questions for you, but I think we should get started. And if you're okay, I can ask you while you're making the recipe.
Absolutely.
So what is the Plantstock recipe that you're making for everyone?
I'm going to be making the double layer frozen peanut butter chocolate cheesecake.
Okay. You had me at double layer.
Yeah. Nice.
All right. How do we start?
All right. So the first thing we need is peanut butter. Now, you can certainly buy peanut butter at the store. I like to make my own, and you can make your own too, because it's really easy if you have a machine. I'll be using the Nutritional machine, but if you have a high-powered blender, if you have a Champion juicer, if you have a food processor, you can make your own. It actually is cheaper and it tastes better. Even though you can find peanut butter in the store that's just peanuts, even without salt, it has that thick, gross layer of oil on top. And if you don't stir it in, it's usually so hard to get out of the jar. And while many stores have that little machine that you can make it your own right there, it often contains salt. So I just make my own simply by taking a bag of unsalted roasted peanuts, putting it in one of the machines that will make it. In this case, I'm using the Nutritional. But again, this also works. I've done this in the Champion Juicer. I've done it in the Vitamix. I've done it in any food processor. And I am just going to go for 2 minutes. It's called the butter setting.
Yep.
And in 2 minutes, we're going to have wonderful. Let me just show you. Maybe you can see this better now. I just put it on 2 minutes, and I am going to start. 4, 3, 2, 1. So that was 2 minutes. But as I was looking at the timer, it actually was ready in about 1 minute. And what I love about when you make your own peanut butter is that it stays creamy even in the refrigerator. That doesn't happen when you use the other machines. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out 1 cup of this. And look how creamy this is. Look at this. Amazing, huh?
Yeah,
and it will stay like that in the fridge. It doesn't get hard. And so if you're somebody like my husband that eats a couple of peanut butter sandwiches every day for lunch, this really is a more delicious and cost-effective way to do it. And again, there's a variety of machines that will make it, but it really is, if taste is important to you, it just tastes so much better than store-bought. And then you don't have all the packaging of the jars or the glasses, and there's no salt, there's no sugar, there's no oil. And of course you could make other nut butters too. So if somebody watching had a peanut allergy or was avoiding peanuts, you can make this exact recipe using almonds and almond butter. So now I've got my peanut butter here, but the next thing I want to do is I want to make the crust, because you can't go from a wet food processor to a dry food processor without having to clean it in the middle. So the crust is very, very easy to make.
And AJ, tell me, because I think I read when I was looking at all the equipment that you recommended that people maybe think about, you had a blow dryer in there. I'm like, a blow dryer? Why would somebody want a blow dryer? And why would you want a blow dryer?
I commend you because you actually read my book, so thank you. And the reason is my sous chef, Rebecca Martinez, came up with this. A lot of times we're doing cooking demonstrations and we've just made something, we've washed the food processor. Now there's a couple of drops of water in it. Well, if I try to grind my peanuts in there, guess what? It doesn't do what it needs to do. It becomes a pesto. And so if you're in a hurry, just take your blow dryer and get those last drops of water out.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. That was actually very clever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my roasted but unsalted peanuts in the food processor, and I'm just going to pulse these so that they become chopped.
Wow, this is like double peanuts.
Right. So what I'm going to do is I need to take a half a cup out, and I'm going to reserve this to sprinkle it over the top at the end. I still have enough in here for the crust. So I'm just going to save these. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the food processor run a little bit longer. I don't want to keep running it so that it becomes a peanut butter. I just want it to be like a flour-like consistency. Perfect. Yeah, because if you keep running it, you will have peanut butter like I just made. Now I'm going to take my beautiful pitted dates. I tend to use the Deglet Nor dates because they're more cost effective. And I have found that the best prices are at Costco, organic, and they come pitted because if you're using a lot of dates, it's kind of a pain to have to keep pitting them. If you're eating dates for pleasure, the medjool date obviously is much more delicious, or the bari date. But for these recipes, I really feel the Deglet Nor, because they're drier, they're not as sticky, would be perfect. So now I'm going to let the food processor run until it starts to slow down. Okay, the fact that it did that could mean that we have a pit, which is the worst, or we have a very, very dry date. So sometimes they're really, really hard. And so you have to take it out because it won't process. So let's try again. when it starts to slow down, you can check it. Now, my Breville, which is a really wonderful food processor, you don't have to have a Breville, but I always recommend people get the biggest and best they could afford of any type of equipment. That was 45 seconds. If you have maybe an older or a less powerful one, it could take longer. So then what I do is I test it by just taking a little clump in my hand and seeing if I can squeeze it together into a ball, which I can. This is actually a recipe. These would be peanut bites, and these are just delicious as they are. You can pop them in your mouth or make brownies. If I can break it in half like this and it doesn't fall apart, that's called the break point. It's ready. So now what I'm going to do is just pour it into my springform pan. And I'll talk a little bit about what a springform pan is. Now, if you process this too long, even though nuts are a whole natural food, they still have about 90% of their calories from fat, and the oil will start coming out, and it will make it kind of a funky texture. So I would err in under processing rather than over processing. For cheesecakes, I love springform pans because what you can do is you can take this off and the ring off, and they're easy to cut. This happens to be a silicone one with a glass bottom, but you can get these for even $7 at the restaurant supply stores. You can get metal ones, but it's just for a nice presentation. And so all I'm doing is pressing it down. So this is my crust.
AJ, what was the culprit? Was it a hard date or was it an actual?
Well, there wasn't a pit, but what stopped the blade was the date was so hard. And that will happen occasionally, but you'll know that because your food processor won't process. So these date nut crusts or seed nut crusts or oat date crusts are so easy to make. Regular pie crusts are oil and butter or Crisco and sugar and flour. So I just made a beautiful crust in basically a minute. So that's my crust.
So that's just peanuts and dates. If you didn't want to use peanuts, could you use
almonds? I would recommend almonds.
Okay. All right. What about walnuts? You ever done walnuts?
I have not done walnuts. Walnuts are a good nut, but they kind of have a strong flavor for dessert. So, I would tell people to try it. I actually, when I used to work in the restaurant, this was the best selling dessert. And so I have made it for special orders with almond. So I haven't tried it with walnut butter. That doesn't mean it won't be good. I just haven't tried it, or with pecan. So, So what I'm doing is I'm just wiping the food processor out to get it ready for the next layer.
Yeah. Hey, tell me, I think I read about you having migraines. What was the culprit? Was it chocolate or was it soy that you have an issue with?
It turned out that I'm allergic to soy, but it was chocolate. So the last time I really had chocolate was November 7th, 2010 at my Healthy Taste of LA conference. And I finally went to a good immunologist that explained that some people have trouble with foods that are high in histamine, like chocolate. And after giving up chocolate, I never had another migraine. Luckily, these desserts were written prior.
Oh my gosh. How often were you getting migraines? Were you eating chocolate?
Every time I ate chocolate, and I was eating chocolate a lot. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Hey, I read something else in the book that I just thought, it just made me giggle. And, I know you've done a lot of coaching with a lot of people, and you mentioned how sometimes what can cause for, people going astray or continuing to gain weight when they don't want to is something that you call snackcident.
Oh, a snackcident.
Yes. Not an accident, but a snackcident.
A snackcident. We all have had them, so don't feel bad about it.
That's right. All right.
So I'm going to make three more layers. And so I like to do the peanut crust layer on the bottom, followed by chocolate, followed by peanut butter, followed by chocolate. But if I make the chocolate layer first, then I'm going to have to clean out my food processor, and I don't want to have to do that. So I'm going to make the peanut butter layer first, put it aside, and then I can use the same food processor. Now, ideally, we would kind of chill this or freeze this in between layers, but we're not going to do that today. I think it will still work out. So the peanut layer, or the peanut butter layer, which is going to be the third layer, if you're going from the bottom up, is very easy. We're going to start with a box of tofu. I like to get the extra firm if you can find it, and you want to make sure you get the aseptic tofu in these packages. The water packed tofu is delicious for stir fries and savory recipes, but for desserts, you need the silken tofu. Where I live, this is available in every regular supermarket, not just the natural food stores, but you can also get it online. So I'm using one box, and this is the Mori New silken tofu. And then we're going to use 1 container of cream cheese. Now, before Miyoko Shinner came out with this lovely brand, I would just make my own from cashews, but it's just, my time is worth just as much to me. So I just buy this. This is a very clean brand. Yes, there is a little salt, but there is no oil. So I'm using 1 container of Miyoko's cream cheese. And then we're going to add the peanut butter that you just saw me made. 1 cup.
And let me ask you this: as a dessert chef, how important do you feel it is to kind of get all the measurements just about 100% correct?
So if it's a raw dessert, you have more flexibility. But if it's a cooked dessert, meaning if it's a baked dessert, you kind of have to follow the recipe, because cooking or raw food dessert making is an art, but baking is a science. So you can't just say, well, I'm going to put in a tablespoon of baking soda instead of a teaspoon. So you do, I believe, have to follow a recipe. And I think that in general, it's a great idea that anytime somebody makes somebody else's recipe, unless they're truly allergic, that the first time they do follow it, because then you know what the person had in mind, then go off the grid and make it your own. That is my recommendation. So this recipe that is going to be one of the layers is a recipe in its own. This is the peanut butter mousse. So if you didn't want to go to the trouble of making the whole cheesecake, just what I'm showing you now, and it's easy to remember because it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 cup date syrup, 1 cup peanut butter, 1 tub of cream cheese, 1 cup of tofu. We're just going to put that in, and that is going to make the peanut butter mousse layer. So we're just going to process this, and this will take just very quick. That basically took about 20 seconds. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place it in this bowl, and then I'm going to do the chocolate layer. This is probably my husband's favorite dessert, the peanut butter mousse. And so we make this into a parfait, and the recipe is in the book. It's called Peanut Butter Paradise Parfait. And so we layer it with streusel crumbs or chocolate crumbs, bananas. And I bring that to the potluck that I attend once a month here in Northern California. And instead of plating individual parfaits, which are beautiful but labor intensive, I do it in a trifle bowl. So
yes, you do say that on page 250 is the peanut butter mousse, and you say it's Charles' absolute favorite. Charles, are you there? Can you attest that this is your favorite?
Yes, I'm here. It is my favorite.
Yeah, he'll eat it even if he's full. Like he's not really an overeater or that excited by food, but if there is this in the house, he will love to have this. And it's really good, actually. I don't eat it regularly, but obviously I tasted it and I'm like, hey, I see why you like it. It's really, really good. And, not everybody can have chocolate or wants to have chocolate. So, it's still dairy-free and delicious. So you can see ideally this would be chilled and it would get a little bit thicker, but we're going to get as much of it out as we can. And then we're going to create the chocolate layer next.
AJ, what is the difference between a mousse and a pudding?
I believe that the mousse is thicker and more luxurious and more decadent. Puddings in general, when they're cooked, usually, I remember from Home Economics in 1971, we cooked them with cornstarch. So I think puddings are less rich and they're less thick. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
Yep. Makes sense.
So now we're going to create the chocolate layer. And like I said, it's okay that I didn't wash it out, because you're not going to really pick up the peanut butter that's left in here. If you wanted to wash it out, you can, but I'm not going to do that. And so it's very similar. We're going to take our 1 box, I believe it's 12.2 ounces of extra firm tofu, 1 carton of, and again, if you don't want to use Miyoko's cream cheese, this is a cashew-based one. If somebody had a cashew allergy, there are so many other ones, Kite Hill. There's Tofutti. Just read your labels and see what ingredients you're comfortable using, or make your own. It is very easy to make overnight cashew cream cheese in many recipes online, which is basically cashews and water. So we have that. And now we're going to add our cocoa powder. I like to use a dark one because, and Hershey's is fine, but what I recommend is Hershey's dark, because it's just much more luxurious. So now what we have to do is melt our chocolate. So let me get my burner.
You guys know where everything is.
We do this a lot. I teach for McDougall. I teach for UC Davis Medical School and Kaiser. So we kind of had to get with the game. All right. So now I'm going to melt the chocolate. So what chocolate, you may ask? Well, the choice is yours. Since I prefer to keep the book 100% sugar-free, I like to use one of the brands that is just 100% cacao. And both of these brands are available at Walmart, as is the date syrup that I used.
I can't see what brands those are, the bars. What are they?
Okay. So one is called Baker's Chocolate and unsweetened. And this has been around ever since I was a kid. That's what kind my mom used. Wow. And then one is Ghirardelli's, and they're both 100% cacao, no other ingredients. And they come in 10 ounces. Now, we do have chocolate chips now that are date sweetened, available online and at stores like Sprouts and Whole Foods, or 100% chocolate chips available at some stores. But I've always used this, and it's perfect because the 10-ounce bar, I need 10 ounces. So I recommend people use a double boiler. But remember, I was a pastry chef for years, and I can do this without burning it. So what I have is my date syrup. Let me get another spatula to keep it a little clean. I don't recommend melting chocolate in the microwave because it can burn. And once chocolate burns, you can't recover from that. You'll have to start over. The double boiler is just basically a pot of boiling water with the chocolate on top. And you always want to melt your chocolate on low heat. So we're just going to melt this chocolate with the date syrup. Now, if you eat sugar, you can just use regular vegan non-dairy chocolate chips. But again, there's so many choices available now that you don't have to. But realize that if you do use chocolate chips that are sweetened, this is going to be sweeter. And this recipe is sweet enough with this. So it shouldn't take very long for the chocolate to melt. And we're just going to, you never want to walk away from melting chocolate or toasting nuts, things that could be in 1 second not ready and then in 1 second ready, because you just have to be mindful. Things like pressure cooking, I love, because you can actually walk away and come back hours later and it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, one of the things, AJ, that I love about your book is the stories, how every recipe has a story behind it. And I find some of the factoids to be just absolutely remarkable. So,
well, you know why I did that, Rip? Because you told me as a friend a long time ago, because you endorsed this book and you endorsed my first book, and you pulled me aside and said, hey, recipes are great, but there's no stories. And I took that note and I appreciate it. And we made sure we did that. Look at how quickly this is all, oh my gosh. It's going to be ready in just seconds. Let me turn the heat down. Look at that. So be very careful when you're melting chocolate. You don't want to burn it. It doesn't taste good. It won't process. Oh, but boy, the smell of chocolate, really, there's nothing like it. And chocolate and peanut butter, if you ask me, are really a match made in heaven. I would imagine that Reese's peanut butter cups or Snickers, those kind of combinations are probably some of the most popular candies in the world. There we go. So I'm going to turn it off. It's ready. And then I'm going to very carefully pour this melted chocolate in the food processor.
Oh, man.
Look at that. Oh, baby. Get every last bit. Okay. Put that here. And now I'm going to do what I did with the first layer and process this. And this would be a great mousse as well. One of the biggest tips I can give is if you have everything out in front of you, it's called the mise en place. It's so much easier to make any recipe. I mean, look at that. Look at the thickness, the richness. This is a mousse. A pudding wouldn't do this, Rip, but a mousse will stay on the spoon. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this filling number one and place it on top. Now, if you did it the other way, the world wouldn't come to an end. Peanut butter first, but it just looks better this way because then you go light, dark, light, dark. So now I'm going to take this and I am going to place it on top of my crust. Wow. And again, ideally, we'd want to freeze this for a little bit so it'd be nice and firm before the peanut butter layer, but we're just not going to do that because I know you don't have hours and hours of time, but I think it will still work. And this smells absolutely amazing. So we're just going to spread it out. I'm going to show you a little trick that I learned from my sister-in-law, Lauren, how to get your blade clean. Because a lot of times people will make things in a food processor, like mousses, like hummus, and there's so much left on the blade. But I'm going to show you a trick that you're going to get at least another half a cup of filling if you do this. And it's based on the principle of centrifugal force. So a lot of people would stop here because they don't want to work that hard. So they'll put it, if you put it back on the base, place your top on just for a quick pulse. What will happen is your blade is completely clean now. Almost every drop of the filling is come off the blade.
What a great trick.
Yep. And then look how much more was in there that a lot of people would just throw out. And I've seen people make hummus in my hands-on classes, and it's like, what the heck? Do you know how much you just wasted? Like a whole serving. So we'll get every last bit out.
Yummy.
Yeah, this is pretty next level, if you ask me. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to take a tool that I love called the offset spatula, just to make it prettier. I mean, because if I use one like this, it's a little harder because this is beveled. Yeah. I can get a nice spreading of it. And we're going to just make this nice and even. Springform pans come in many different shapes and sizes. Hopefully I picked one big enough for the next two levels, but if not, we'll make it work. That's my motto. It's not what you can make, it's what you can fix. So I have it nicely spread evenly right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my peanut butter layer. First, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit on the side so that we can have the nice distinct layers when we do it. And now let's put the peanut butter on top carefully. Yeah. Wow.
So that's the homemade peanut butter right there. Is that the 1 cup?
No, this is all the mousse. This is the peanut butter mousse that we made.
Yeah.
Now, this is the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about in a demonstration like this. Is the melted chocolate layer going to take without this being frozen? I don't know, but we're going to do our best to make it work. Because what we have is the top layer, the topping, which is melted chocolate and peanuts. I've never done it, in real time like this recipe. So we are going to find out together. But first, I do want to just rinse my offset spatula.
AJ, what in the world are you going to do with this after you've made it?
Okay, great question. As luck would have it, we have a huge plant-based community up here in Northern California. We get together for potlucks at least twice a month, and it's actually a good friend's birthday coming up, and so it's going to go in the freezer, and we're going to enjoy it next week for her birthday. So see, I'm smoothing it out really nicely, and guess what? We have got one more layer. So this is the topping. This thing weighs a ton. And that's like when you were asking me earlier, you don't need to eat the whole thing to feel satisfied because you're going to feel full because it is so rich. Yeah. So now I'm going to basically do what I did before. I'm going to melt some topping.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I've got my dish.
AJ, speaking of birthdays, guess whose birthday it is today?
I bet her name starts with an A.
Oh, you got it. You got it. You're way too smart. Yes.
I'm going to call her. That's right. That's when you said July 18th is a special day. So I have my unsweetened chocolate. And I have a little bit of non-dairy milk. A great brand is Plantstock, now available at Whole Foods.
Plantstrong.
Sorry, Plantstrong. I was looking at your thing. Plantstrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the one that has, I love the walnut one. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's one of our blends that's lightly sweetened with
Date.
whole fruit, nothing but the fruit. Yeah, the dates, the pulverized
Yeah,
dates.
that's my favorite.
Has
Now,
the Chef AJ stamp of approval.
Okay, so like I said, in a perfect world, I would have frozen this. This top would be solid, and then the hot chocolate would go on the frozen thing, and it would spread perfectly. I've never done it without doing this, so if it doesn't work, it's still going to be delicious. It may just not be quite as beautiful if you did it that way. So once again, I'm carefully melting the chocolate. If you melt the chocolate without a double boiler like I'm doing, there has to be some liquid, like a little bit of non-dairy milk or some date syrup. So this is melting really fast. I'm going to have to turn it down. It smells wonderful. I'm going to keep stirring it. Come on. All right. Want to make it nice and smooth. I'm going to turn the heat off now. Add my little bit of date syrup. Mix it in. I mean, can you imagine for 5 years, this is all I did all day was make these? That was my job.
No, I really can't. Wow.
Yeah.
And did you ever get sick of making these desserts?
You know, I never got sick of making them because I feel it's fun and people had so much joy from it. But I really did get sick of I don't have to taste my recipes now, but at the restaurant, sometimes I did. And when I would come home from work, it would just be like, I would put a piece of like dulce in my mouth. It was like just to get the sweet taste out. You know what I mean? Like I actually was like, oh my God, no more sweet. All right. So again, I can't promise you, I've never done it this way without it being pre-frozen, but I'm going to do my best and just pour it over the top.
Oh yeah. I think it'll work like a charm.
Yeah. And then what we're going to do is with our offset spatula, what's nice about when you have it a little bit frozen, it just makes it. Yeah, I think it is going to work though. So spread it over the top, cover up all that peanut butter. I'm not going to be able to take the ring off. I can send you a photo, but if I do, because it's not ready, and then we're going to take our chopped peanuts and sprinkle it over the top. Oh, this is beautiful. I don't think I've made this really for years. Look at this. There's another version of this without the chocolate layer. And it has the chocolate topping, and it's called the Taste Like a Frozen Snicker Bar Pie. And that's our mutual friend, Dr. Matt Letterman's favorite. When we both lived in LA, he would order that for me all the time. So,
but AJ, this is the same thing you're making, right? Look at my screen.
Yeah, I'm making the one on the back cover.
Yeah,
that is exactly what I'm making. And so now I just have to place it in the freezer. You want to place it level because otherwise your dessert would go like this or this. And I'm telling you, you will wow people regardless of what dietary style they eat. This is really, I consider this one of the most show-stopping desserts you can make.
Well, listen, I wish we had, taste TV, but we don't. But wow, incredible. So do you have time for me to ask you some more questions about the book?
Absolutely. I just need to wash my hand.
Yeah. You go for it.
Would you mind if I place the dessert in the freezer though, while we do this?
No, go for it. So AJ, that was a masterful creation. Tell me, for somebody that doesn't make a lot of desserts that are that kind of multi-stepped, should I be overwhelmed or should I just dive in and do it?
Well, that's the beauty. If they buy my book, they'll get the recipe video too, and they can watch the video over and over. That might not, if you've never made a dessert, that might not be the first one to start with. You know what I mean? But it's not that difficult because basically I'm taking ingredients and putting them in the food processor. I would say the most difficult thing about this recipe is the melting of the chocolate, because if you've never done that, there's a learning curve. But other than that, think about it. If you make hummus by taking beans and garlic and lemon juice in there. So I took, cream cheese, tofu, and cocoa powder. It's the same principle. So I think except for the melting of the chocolate, I don't think it's a very difficult dessert.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. I want to talk about some of your recipes because again, I went through and I read the story on every one of them,
Wow,
and
thank you.
I just find it to be fascinating. So I'm going to start with this outrageous brownie, right? Because you talk about how the first brownie basically appeared in the 1898 Sears Roebuck catalog, right? As a confection, or is that right? Yeah, as a confection.
Absolutely.
I mean, in Chicago, right?
That's where I'm from.
Which is where you're from. So you and the brownie hail from Chicago.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I just want to give people an example of how much fun there is. And then the fruitcake. Tell people, like, where does the fruitcake originate from?
Oh my God, that was one of the queens of England. I can't remember her name, but it was like a lot of people think fruitcake is a doorstop, but it actually can be really delicious.
Well, yeah, and here you have it goes back to Roman times, right? I mean, it's like, give me a break. The Cinnabons, you have such a fantastic fun facts about the Cinnabon and about how it. I mean, do you know off the top of your head the nutritional panel on it?
So I looked it up online and because I just traveled yesterday at an airport and the wafting of the Cinnabon through the airport is it's just so enticing. One Cinnabon can have almost 1,100 calories, and I think it was something like 56 grams of fat or something like that.
I have it right here: 51 grams of fat, 20 of them saturated, 75 grams of sugar, and 1,270 milligrams of sodium. Unlike your buns, right?
My buns I have none of that. Yeah, I really think that people can replicate their favorites using whole foods. Yeah, I love that recipe. That's an easy one to make.
Yeah. Now, on page 85, you have this pumpkin pie. You say you're not typically a huge fan of pumpkin pie, but you say you love this one. Everybody, look at this. Look at this. I mean, holy Toledo.
I think what I like about it is it doesn't have the traditional crust, which is, crusts are just not that delicious often. They're not very sweet. And this kind of has like a self-baked in crust. So I do enjoy that one.
Yeah. And on page 91, you have this banana strawberry chocolate mousse tart. Okay. Can everybody see that? You say there's a secret. You go ahead.
That is a raw food dessert. So I do have friends that are 100% raw. They can eat that dessert. It's not only unbaked or uncooked, but it is 100% raw. And
you say in the story, it's made from a secret ingredient that you won't have to sacrifice flavor either. What's the secret ingredient?
I'm glad you brought that up because that secret ingredient is avocado. And so if somebody was allergic to soy but wanted to make the recipe I just demonstrated, substitute avocado for the tofu.
Great. On page 97, you have this butterscotch pie. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Do you know who John Tanner is?
John Tanner, absolutely. Yeah.
So John Tanner has a food delivery service, and he actually sells that recipe, not as a pie, but as a pudding.
Okay. So what do you use for the butterscotch flavoring in this?
So the sweet potatoes, the orange ones, which are not my favorite to eat as food, in desserts are incredible. And when you combine it with a little bit of pure vanilla bean powder, and my sweetener in that one is bananas, there's no dates, it just tastes like snack pack pudding. The recipe was from Mairead Reddy, from Ready or Not. She's a vegan graphic designer in Ohio. And it tastes like butterscotch pudding. It's amazing.
Got it. On page 109, you have this lemon meringue pie. Do you know the history of the lemon meringue pie? I found it to be like really fascinating.
I don't remember. I should have read my book before coming on the show.
No. Listen, I'm hitting you fast and I'm hitting you hard. But I'll let you know. First created by Elizabeth Goodfellow, a 19th century pastry shop owner who ran America's first culinary school.
That's right.
From Philadelphia. I mean, so I just like I'm eating this stuff up. I really am. So on page 123, you have the mind-blowing kale chips.
I had to have, just like you guys, I had to have one kale recipe, and it's incredible that you can make kale chips with chocolate.
I never would have thought that. That's why I was so amazed. And you said
it's kind of like the Fingerlings, but instead of Wheaties, I use chocolate.
Yeah. And because you always sign off everything love and
Love
kale,
and
you're like, I
kale.
had to get some kale, little kale love in there. Okay. 137, AJ. I am putting you to the test here. Chef AJ's Frango mint pie.
Okay.
Look at
I,
that.
that if I was going to pick a chocolate recipe in the book that is my favorite, it would be that one. And I'm sure you know Dr. Terry Mason from Forks Over
Oh,
Knives.
oh yeah.
So I got to serve him that pie because being from Chicago, there was a store called Marshall Fields that made the best mint chocolate in the world. It was known as the Frango Mint. And it was the most delicious combination of mint and chocolate that would melt in your mouth. And in their dining room, they had a Frango mint pie. When I was little, my mom would take me on the weekends. We would get it. And it was like a frozen ice cream chocolate mint pie. And there's actually two recipes that are somewhat like it. There's a raw version and this version. If for people that do love mint and chocolate, which I actually like better than chocolate and peanut butter, that recipe is a delight. It's delicious.
On page 145, you have these nutty buddies. And I want you to know, we made these as a family 2 nights ago. I posted it on my Instagram channel.
Oh my goodness.
The frozen bananas with the chocolate and then the sprinkled peanuts. It was incredible and so easy.
Because Disneyland, they make frozen bananas like that, but it's got like the coating has like hydrogenated oil and palm oil. Yeah, the Nutty Buddies are so much fun for it. And there's recipes in here that are easy enough to get the kids involved, like the Nutty Buddies, like the caramel apples.
Yep. Goodman's peanut chews. I love this story.
I think those were the last recipe added. Okay, so when I went to the University of Pennsylvania, I became vegan like the first week, September 1st, 1977. And there was a candy that was vegan and is still vegan today, at least the dark chocolate version called Goldenberg's Peanut Chews. But they're not super healthy. I'm sure they have corn syrup and all that kind of stuff. And so I created a healthy version. Those are very popular, the Goodman Peanut Chews. I almost made those on the show instead because it's still the wonderful combination of peanut and chocolate. And what's interesting is you make it in an 8-inch or 9-inch square silicone pan. I can get 64 bites out of that. You'd think because it's so rich that when I go to the potlucks, a little square is enough. So imagine one recipe you can get 64 chews out of.
Yeah. You have a whole sip it section. You started out with showing people how to make different milks, from a Cinnabon milk to a pistachio, pina colada, almond milk. Look at these guys. And my question to you on this one is, you spell milk MYLK. How'd you come up with that?
Because I didn't want to be sued by anybody. I hear all these stories that you're not allowed to call plant versions the same as real. So I figured it was safer to just make my own spelling up.
Well, I think it's actually ingenious.
Thank you.
Page 231. I want to direct people, including myself, to this. You have a cauliflower rice pudding. So how did you in the world come up with a cauliflower rice?
So again, this is not a rich and decadent dessert. This is very low calorie density. I love that photo. That might be my favorite photo in the book. And actually, that was my idea. Hannah executed it, but I said, I want a photo like that. I love that photo. Yeah. So I was making my rice pudding, which again is not one of the sweetest desserts in the book. And again, there's ways to make things sweeter. So for example, in the apple pie rice pudding, if you use just plant milk, it's going to be less sweet than if you use a little plant milk and a little unsweetened apple juice. And so I was making it and I was out of rice and I had already done the rest of the recipe. And I thought, what about rice cauliflower? And it actually worked. Rip, can I show you one of my very favorite photos in the book? And it's it's this one. It's right before the introduction. I don't know why this one catches my eye, but this is just one of my very favorite photos in the whole book of the three desserts together.
No, that's definitely really good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Look at that. I just can't say enough how gorgeous it is. Like this on page 241, the decadent chocolate mousse, which is probably my favorite thing in the world, is a chocolate mousse. But look at that.
Yeah. And that recipe is a must-make recipe every year that I go to Rancho La Puerta in the hands-on cooking classes. And so that's similar to the mousse we made here, but there's no cream cheese in it. And it's a very, very easy recipe to make.
What is the youngest student that you've ever had attend one of your classes?
7 years old. I think he's 8 now, and he'll turn 9 this year. And I teach dessert master classes, and he is the most adorable kid. His name is Luca, and he was holding up signs in the class. I love you, Chef AJ, and I hope to meet him one day. I met his father, and if he can make the strawberry chocolate cheesecake, you guys can make the dessert that I made today.
You made a sweet potato mousse with caramelized apples on page 252. Let me try and backtrack to the photo here. And you won the contest.
It was an Iron Chef. It was at a Healthy Taste of Sacramento. Mary McDougall, Andrew Spudfit Taylor, and I can't remember who was Linda Middlesworth were the judges. Rip, I love Iron Chefs. You used to have them at your events because you can really create recipes on the fly and really creative. A lot of the recipes in here were created in Iron Chef competitions.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Because I think in your process book, you talked about how, I think in the acknowledgments, that the only thing that you loved more than potatoes were Charles and maybe, I don't know if you had Bailey yet. But in this book, you say the only thing that you love more than dessert is Charles and then and then Bailey, right?
Bailey, yeah. Right. They have to come first. I actually, in one book I wrote to Charles and Bailey, I love you more than sweet potatoes.
That's right. That's exactly what it was. How is Bailey doing? I know Bailey had some issues recently, some health scares.
Yeah, I think she's doing good. I'll bring her over to see you if you like. She is great. You have dogs, right, Rip?
Yes.
They're the best. They're family members. Let me go get her for you.
Great.
Aw. And she does not eat any of the desserts in the book.
Bailey.
So she doesn't care for dessert. She does love sweet potatoes, but not dessert.
Yeah.
I just love her so much.
What's Bailey's? Remind me, what's her history?
Well, she was adopted at 4 years old at Shelter Hope in Ventura, California. She was the oldest dog there at the time. I was actually I hate to say this, my dog Sparky had passed 2 weeks earlier, and we were going to pick up a puppy that was like 7 weeks old named Darby. And as I was walking into the shelter, John Pierre called me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to adopt a puppy." He goes, "Oh, I don't want you to do that. I want you to get the oldest dog there." And at 4 years old, she was the oldest dog there. And it turns out she was the best dog there, too. So you could thank John Pierre for your whole life.
You know, that John Pierre is such a great human being. Wow. Yep. And what a great suggestion he gave you there.
Yep. Yeah. People overlook the older dogs, and they're amazing. You know, she came housebroken. So it was great. No puppy training, no teething. She's just a perfect dog.
Oh, hi, Bailey.
Say hi to Rip. Hi. Yeah.
AJ, this has been stupendous.
Oh, thank you, Rip. I just love you so much. Your whole family. You're like the first. You're like really the Esselsons are like the first family of kale.
Well, that means a lot coming from you. Yeah. So huge congratulations on this incredible work of art, Sweet Indulgence. Is this your third or fourth book, AJ? Help me out.
I think it's my fourth. Yeah. Own Your Health, Secret. It's, I would say it's my fourth, and 4 is my lucky number too.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be such a huge hit. Is it coming out? Is it hardback, paperback?
Yes, it's hardback. We the bookstore said that this is what we were told, that cookbooks sell better in hardback, and it was much more expensive to do it this way, but that's what they said, and so we're taking a chance. Well, it's going to be well worth it. I can send you a real one now if you want, because the one you have, some of the recipes are incorrect because it was the advanced reader copy. But if you'd like a real copy now, I'm happy to send it to you. Sign me up. Okay, put them on the list. Hey, all right. AJ, Charles, Bailey, hugs and kisses, love and kale to you guys. Can you give me a Plant Strong virtual fist bump on the way out? Yep. All right. Don't drop Bailey. Yeah. Ready? Boom. 1. Boom. Boom. Where's Charles' fist? I don't see Charles' fist.
Okay, here we go.
There he is. Boom.
Good.
All right.
How
See
about
you
a few-
guys.
oh,
See you around the
Thank
kale
you.
patch. Thank you, Chef AJ. I loved that conversation and that demonstration. Okay, chefaj.com is where you want to go to pre-order the new book between now and its release date of August 27th. And that way you ensure that you're going to get all the bonuses, including those 150 videos. I'll be sure to put a link in the show notes to make sure that it's an absolute breeze for you. And here's to each and every one of you experiencing your own sweet indulgences in life. Be sure to keep it tasty, keep it sweet, and always, always keep it plant strong. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week. The Plant Strong podcast team includes Carrie Barrett, Lori Kordowich, and Amy Mackey. If you like what you hear, do us a favor and share the show with your friends and loved ones. You can always leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And while you're there, make sure to hit that follow button so that you never miss an episode. As always, this and every episode is dedicated to my parents, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Ann Cryle Esselstyn. Thanks so much for listening.